know, my name is Susanna Zaraisky, and I'm the author of the book Languages Music. And what interests me about what both of you guys are doing is that, you spoke Portuguese and Spanish, I think both of you, before you were creating music in the languages. But what I'm trying to help people is to learn languages using music. And I think that for some people, creating music while they're learning a language could be a lot of fun. And I want to learn from you guys about how you learn languages, and then later on what role music had. So my first question to both of you is, how did you learn Spanish and Portuguese? So we can start with Alex, and then we'll go to Idahosa.
When I was, like I said, I was raised by a Spanish nanny when I was a baby, who just spoke Spanish to me. So I learned it before English, and then mannerisms and things like that just came naturally. And then in school, I took it to learn how to read and write. And then growing up in LA, you'd always practice Spanish because it's just the lay of the land. And then I started getting involved with different people, different Spanish people. For example, I dated a Dominican girl. I started hanging out with Puerto Ricans, and in LA, it's pretty much El Salvadorian and Mexican, a little bit of Ecuadorian and Peruvian, and then when you get to the East Coast, it's mostly Dominican and Puerto Rican. And then so you're Spanish, like anything, like accents. Spanish is Spanish, but there's a lot of different Spanishes. You have Spanish from Spain, from Argentina, from Mexico, and so I started picking up the different slangs, and then basically Dominican Spanish took over. That was the Spanish that I became closest to. And so because it's kind of like slang.
Yeah. Did you learn any Dominican Spanish through reggaeton or any other Dominican music?
Not really, to be honest. I learned it kind of before reggaeton popped off, and I don't think I learned too much language through music. I think what I do try to do is, but to really master a language, I think you have to be able to listen to a song and understand it. That's a great test. You know what I mean? Because you might be able to speak a language fluently, but to listen to a song like on the radio and really understand what they're saying, that's tough to do, especially when if you don't speak a language really well. Even if you speak it really well, I think that's tough to do. But learning it through the music, I mean, occasionally, yeah, you might find a word or two that you hear, you might be like, oh, what's that? But that's not what I did to learn a language.
Mm. And how about for your Portuguese? How did you acquire Portuguese?
Just coming down here, just meeting people and just figuring out, getting a couple words down a day. But I basically would speak Spanish when I came down here, and just fit in a few Portuguese words. So half of my sentences would be completely portaño, like all wrong, and eventually you start getting I think vocabulary is definitely the way to go prior to grammar, because it's really tough. Grammar throws you off. I don't know if Idahosa had the same problem, but like I had a lot of problems with like minha mãe, na rua, no mundo, like putting like the feminine and masculine things. That I got really thrown off with that. But the words, for example, like frango or fome, things like that I picked up much quicker, and that kind of helped me get the point across, as opposed to getting the point across correctly grammatically. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you currently live in Rio de Janeiro, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in Rio right now.
And so how many years have you been living there?
Probably about since January, February 2008.
Okay, great. And Idahosa Ness, can you tell us about how you learned Spanish and Portuguese?
My background, I didn't grow up really in a Spanish-speaking neighborhood at all, so I was just like everyone else in America, and took Spanish class in school, starting from middle school.
Yeah.
But I don't actually have any recollection of ever learning anything in those classes. But at some point, I decided to do some program when I was like 15 or 16 in Mexico, in Querétaro, Mexico, with my dad. My dad's a university professor, so I can do the school programs for his school for free. So I did some 3-week program in Querétaro, and I think there's when I really kind of realized how language worked, in the sense that it was all about getting the accent down and whatnot. So I got decent while I was there, and then I figured out a way my senior year of high school to graduate early, and I did so I can go to Mexico again, this time in Guadalajara for 4 months. And I learned pretty advanced abilities there. While I was there, I had learned a few songs just incidentally. I'm a musician, so I'm always going to be attracted to that kind of stuff anyways. But I didn't really formalize anything. I just did it whenever, I felt like doing it. And And that was that. Then when I got to college, I started taking Chinese, and then studied abroad in China, got fluent in Chinese, and then when I graduated from school, I went to Brazil. So Portuguese is my third language, and by this time, if it's my third language, I have a lot of experience learning languages. I've always kind of approached things in my own way, and I started to kind of formalize a better way of kind of approaching things through music, because I had a very strong intuition that by learning songs, I'd be helping myself out a lot more than any other kind of activity. So what I did before going to Brazil, because I didn't take a class, I didn't have time to take a class. I just on my free time, I just learned songs, and I learned it very intense, because I knew going from Spanish to Portuguese, the main problem would be the accent, because the words are all very similar and things transition very smoothly, but at the same time, you can confuse them. So I want to get the accent down really well.
So which music did you use? Which songs?
I don't know. Things would just pop on my way. I can't even remember actually who I listened to before I went to Brazil. Because when I went to Brazil, I got exposed to a lot of different stuff. Ahead of time, I don't know, like some random. Oh, I also bought my cavaquinho on Amazon right before I went.
What's a cavaquinho?
The cavaquinho is that instrument I play in my video, and it's a mini guitar. And if you ever hear like a samba song, and you hear that, that's the cavaquinho. And it always plays the kind of percussive chord structure in the background. And I picked that because I like the way it looked, and also I play violin, so it's a similar size, and so my finger dexterity was already in place. And so I got that, started fooling around, would learn some songs. I really, for the life of me, cannot remember any single song I learned. Oh, I learned some song from the daughter of Elis Regina, whose name I can't remember.
Do you remember the song? That's okay.
It's like, o meu samba vai da 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 da. I don't know, I like learned it really fast, and then kind of forgot about it afterwards.
Yeah.
But I learned some, I remember some other song. The first song I learned on my cavaquinho was some kind of old cavaquinho, old samba song, and it's like Jorge, o cara macaco no seu galho, Jorge, eu não me, something like that, and it's kind of a goofy song, and yeah, so I did that. I learned a bunch of songs, and then I went there, and I just went in there, and the first 2 weeks were rough. I didn't really know anyone. I didn't know how to speak Portuguese, but just by forcing myself into it and really pay attention to the sounds, by the third week I was pretty conversational. And then I started getting really into the music scene, and then I really started to learn a lot more songs. And then from there, my Portuguese was starting to take off. And then finally, I discovered that that freestyle rap group that I was telling Alex about. And that's when I kind of sat down. I was like, oh man, I want to be able to freestyle like these guys. So I would kind of write my own lyrics and try to test out, improvisation skills and whatnot. And just the mental exertion I put into that activity, within a week or 2 weeks of doing that, my Portuguese skyrocketed, and I got really good at that time.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So before I go into how you both created music in Portuguese, I have two more questions for you, Idahosa. So I remember reading that you also know your mother's native language, Edo? How do you pronounce it?
Edo.
Edo. Did you learn that as a kid?
No, I do not know that language.
Oh, you don't?
I was saying, I know the terminology I use is the flow.
Okay.
Being the sound patterns, and so I can do all the sounds and I can imitate the sounds. So what I can do is, if my mom says something to me, I can mimic her pretty well.
Got it. So you're like a parrot.
Yeah, but that's actually kind of a recent skill I developed, because my mom speaks 5 languages, so my dad speaks English, so I was never in a multilingual environment really.
Yeah. But
I came back home from Brazil with my ideas for learning language, and it's funny because my mom's full name, I could never really pronounce it. And then, so I asked her, I was like, she said you can do it. I was like, I could do it as a kid, but I can't do it anymore. So I said, is there a song for it? And she's like, oh, actually there is, and apparently in Nigeria there's a song for everything. So she had her own song for her name, and I learned the song, and now I can say her name perfectly.
Can you sing that to us?
Yeah, it was the song is really simple, or it's just her name over and over again, but it's Agariag buinse, aik beyo, agariag buinse, aik beyo, agariag buinse. It just keeps going. And yeah, so I just broke down every syllable, learned the melody, put the two together, and now I'll never forget my mother's name.
That's hilarious. So,
Yeah.
what was it about learning these Portuguese songs of samba that helped you learn Portuguese pronunciation when you were going from Spanish to Portuguese?
Sure. Well, as you probably know, I have like a very formalized technique for teaching people how to sing songs with a perfect accent.
Mm-hmm.
And my argument for why that's so important is because, like Alex was saying before, you're gonna get that feel of the language, which you learn when he was a child, growing up with his nanny, and that feel people kind of overlook when they learn the language. Like, oh, maybe I'll get it, maybe or not. But what I argue is that is the most important thing for you to learn in a language, because it's from that everything else falls into place. So you can study the sound patterns in detail by learning songs. And more importantly, there's the actual physical process going on as far as your perception of the sounds and the, motor coordination and muscle memory in your mouth and your speech organ when you create those sounds. And just like learning to ride a bike, you can only do it through practice over and over again. And you could theoretically sit down and memorize the script to last night's news channel and repeat it over and over again in Portuguese, but that's gonna be boring.
Extremely
But
boring.
if you learn exactly, but if you learn a song lyric and you learn it correctly, each time you sing it, you develop those perception skills. You develop the motor skills in your mouth to produce the sounds. And the best example I can think of from Portuguese, because people ask me how do you learn a language afterwards, and it works with grammar as well. Like Alex is saying about Spanish, going to Spanish-Portuguese grammar. One thing that exists in Portuguese grammar that doesn't exist in Spanish, or they don't use in Spanish actually, is the future subjunctive.
Yes.
And it's funny, I was using it. I never took a class, and I was using future subjunctive without even really knowing what the name of the tense was or what it was. And the reason I was using it is because one of the songs I learned early on in Brazil was São Gonçalo by Seu Jorge. And the one key part, the one key part is like, se você quiser, se não quiser, tudo bem, meu bem. And like, I just love that line so much that like I'd always say it. So it just kind of made sense to me when someone's like, oh, do you can I do this? I'm like, sim, se você quiser,
Yeah.
And then the thing is though, that same pattern transfers over to all the other things. So I say, se você fizer, se você falar, se você, tiver. And it's the same rhythm pattern, it's the same thing, and it all fits. I don't have to think about it. So I never thought about future subjunctive until after I've already used it. And to me, that's the ideal way to learn a language.
I think it's wonderful what you just said, because a lot of times when I talk about learning languages through music, people say, well, what about the grammar? And I always say, you actually learn the grammar through the songs, and you remember your grammar rules because you heard them in a song. So it's great what you just said, because I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and I always, whenever someone asks me that same question about grammar, I always respond back to them, do you think about grammar when you speak English?
Mostly no.
And yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think about future subjunctive. And apparently there's a subjunctive test in English. I wouldn't know. And I don't think about it. And if you, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that what happens is when people learn language through grammar instruction, some people are able to kind of get past that eventually and speak naturally, but a lot of people get stuck and they're always kind of double thinking and thinking about the grammar. And the thing is that normal speech is such a complex activity that you don't have enough brain power to be constantly thinking analytically about what you're saying while you're saying it. Like you can do it to a certain degree, but you can't do it all the time. I can't be conjugating and breaking down stems and adding, different endings, third person tense. I can't do all that while I'm trying to explain to you like why I need to call the police, So so yeah, that's my response to this.
I think TV is a good way too to follow along with grammar, because depending on who you're listening to, if you're listening to a funk singer, for example, on as a guide on how to learn a language, it's probably not the best. Seu Jorge Portuguese is very, for example, here they'll be like, in Spanish you'll be like, no voy, or in English, I'm not going. Here they'll be like, no, vou no. They'll say no like 3-4 times. You're like, what the hell, Like
Yeah.
the language, people here, the grammar is all screwed up here. You know what I mean? It's not typical. And you can't really. I think vocab is really the key, and then you kind of structure the sentence around the vocabulary that you know. I mean, to get the message across, I think the most important thing is to have the key word of what you want to do. If you're hungry, it's just, be able to say food. If you're thirsty, it's be able to say drink. And then eventually, with time, you'll say, okay, well, I want to drink. This is the drink I want. But I think, like he said, music is a great tool. I mean, I actually never. It's shocking. I never really, use music as a guide like that. But it always definitely, helped me out with words. I mean, there's always a word I wouldn't understand, and I'd be listening to a song or something like, oh, what does that mean? Like, but the way that it also use it for a guy. I think that's really cool. I never learned like that.
So I'm curious, Alex, how did you learn grammar in Portuguese, or did you just pick it up, figuring out what people were saying and realizing the difference from Spanish, and then just figuring out that, okay, that must be the grammatical difference between the two languages?
I think it was a matter of time. I mean, after screwing up so many times, after saying the wrong thing so many times, and people correcting you so many times, one day it just clicks. You know what I mean? Like, you'll say like mi amai, or say meu mai, meu mai, meu mai, and then eventually you just realize that it's mi amai, and I think the biggest thing was getting the masculine and the feminine thing down. I mean, because it's a little different in Portuguese, in Spanish, but once you get one or two words down, the rest kind of falls into place in regards to, feminine and masculine. And I think the writing helps a lot too. When you can see the word in front of you, it'll help when you pronounce it. Because like my writing skills came naturally from my speaking skills. You know what I mean? From my language skills. I never took a writing course, but just I don't know if you know what a cecigile is. It's like that stupid squiggle, or like
Of course we know.
So I don't know where any of that stuff goes, but my vocab is correct. Like my 90% of my exactly. Most Brazilians speak Portuguese, but 90% of my words come out properly spelled just on the strength of my language skills. You know what I mean? Like, and so one thing kind of leads into the other. You know what I mean? And then also like the whole. Because the problem is when you converse with people like on Facebook or Orkut or MSN, everyone uses like abbreviations. Instead of putting like você, they'll put like VCE or também, they'll put like TBM. So it's not always the best place to learn. A lot of people don't speak proper Portuguese in those environments, especially the people that we're probably speaking to. From Tuesday freestyle sessions and I'm just saying, like, it's complicated. I mean, but I think what really it is useful. What he said, like trying to follow along music and really like force yourself to understand and learn. I think it's a really cool thing. I never picked that up ever. And my language I probably would have gotten a lot better in the language faster. I mean, hypothetically by doing that. So, but I think TV helps a lot too.
It's
TV, because you can actually when you link the visual, the audio, and everything together. When you see somebody speaking it, and then you see subtitles and all that, it helps because you're kind of forced to get into something. You know what I mean?
It's true because some people need that visual, the image. I'm curious, since you guys, so Alex, as Don Blanquito, you sing and you rap in Spanish, and then now in Portuguese, and Idahosa, I know you sing in Spanish, and then I know you do freestyle in Portuguese. I don't know if you do freestyle rapping in Spanish. I'm curious what it's like for you guys to express yourself in a different language through music. Is there a certain freedom you feel that you can say certain things in Spanish or Portuguese that you couldn't say in English? How is it for you? Maybe Alex, you can start.
I speak a lot more freely in English, I think, because every place is different. Like you can't be as free about certain things as you can. We have freedom of speech in the States. In Rio, you're kind of limited. You can talk about anything, but depending where you are, you can easily offend your public. In my situation, in my case, I have to be careful because I have real fans now, so I can't be as crude and I can't be as free as I used to be. You know what I mean? I got to really be careful about what I talk about or what I say, because I can, if I'm talking about, fucking this hoe or some crazy shit like that, I can't do that anymore, because I might have a bunch of girls in the audience that are listening to me, and I'll be like, oh, what a pervert, or who knows? We're in the States. It's normal to talk about this stuff. Like, I feel like, also freestyling. I think that's a whole nother, in a different language. In English, for example, I can flow very easily, but it's very frustrating. Even rapping in a different language, and even singing another language, it's very difficult to freestyle in another language, because you actually have to process what you're going to say, and in freestyle it's fast. You don't have time to process anything. You're talking seconds, so you can't sit there and be like, okay, well, I'm going to create this rhyme, because when I'm writing a song, I have time to write it out. I have a beat or whatever, or I can create a song, and I have time to put together a sentence and a structure that's going to be cool. But with a freestyle, you're on the spot, and you have no time to sit to rewrite something or to redo something. Like, Idahosa, he said that he writes things down to practice in a freestyle, and you can do that, but in a real freestyle, the way I did it growing up is off the top of your head. I mean, you flow about something that's happening right now. You know what I mean? Without using anything that's written. But certain people use written rhymes maybe to practice, like he said. But I'm just saying, it's tough. Freestyling, I think freedom of speech in the States is a lot more liberal than it is people are very touchy on race, very touchy on sex, on drugs, whereas in the States you can pretty much say anything you want, I think. You agree, Idahosa?
Yeah, it's definitely a different feel there in Rio.
How was it for you to do freestyle?
Sorry, what was the question?
How was it for you to do freestyle, like what Alex was talking about?
So yeah, you asked if I do it in Spanish. It's kind of a side project of mine to develop my freestyle abilities and my improvisational rap abilities in the languages I speak in other languages. So my field of study is on linguistics, and in the past few years kind of branched out to what I call musical linguistics, and just looking at how our brains process sound systems. So to answer your original question, as far as expressing myself in Spanish or Portuguese or Chinese or whatnot,
yeah,
the way, I like to say language is music as kind of, it sounds nice, but really what I've come to realize now is that neither is the other. What they both are is just systems of organized sound, and human beings, we express ourselves, one principal way of expressing ourselves is through sound. So for me, a way for me to kind of just continually open myself up is to learn new ways to express myself through sound, whether that's speaking, like have a regular conversation with somebody in a different language, whether I'm rapping in a language, whether I'm playing a violin or cavaquinho or drums, whether I'm doing three of those things at the same time. I'm constantly experimenting, constantly trying to find new ways. And the name of my method is a mimic method, because the whole point is that the only way our brains actually acquire new sound systems is by constantly mimicking. And then all those kind of, through a process called statistical learning, we kind of develop all these grammatical patterns, sound patterns, and we become free. And that's how you learn how to improvise freestyle. It's not a natural ability I was born with. It's just something I developed from practicing as a kid all the time. And I got really good in English. And what happened was I got to Brazil, and I saw these guys who were really good in Portuguese, and I wanted to join in with them in Portuguese, and I couldn't. Mm-hmm. And so I sat down, and I kind of figured out ways that I can get better at it. One strategy is, best strategy is to learn a lot of rap songs so that you can have some kind of thing to reference. You can write down things, you can think of things creative. But like Alex said, in the moment, it's all about improvise. And, I felt I was fluent in Portuguese before I did that. But then I realized I'm not as fluent in Portuguese as I am in English, because in English, I'm able to musically express myself combining rhythm to a beat with English meaning and poetry. And I can't do that in Portuguese yet, and I don't like that. So I'm going to try to just figure it out, And right now I'm doing the same process in Spanish. I found like a freestyle circle here. And like whenever I walk down the street by myself, I like almost always will freestyle about my walk down the street, Mira, esta persona que va pasando, and there's a whole bunch of different strategies you can do. And the reason why I'm kind of following that line is, my main passion is teaching people how they can express themselves in music and language. Mm-hmm. And freestyle, I think, is a very powerful tool, just because if you think about it, it requires such a strong command of the sounds and the meanings that you can do it all at once and make it sound good, like, you know, if you can formalize a way you can teach that to somebody, then that's a really, really great way to learn a language or any kind of auditory skill, you know?
And it sounds like a lot of fun, too.
Yeah.
Huh. How about,
It is fun, it is.
yeah. So, Idahosa, do you find that same self-censorship with content when you're in Brazil than when you're in the U.S.?
Content? I don't know. I mean, around the groups, I know Alex. You live? Where do you live? Rocinha? Where'd you live?
I live in Tabajaras, which is Copacabana, it's a favela in Copacabana.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the main groups I was hanging out with were musical groups, random people I met, and also I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a lot while I was there. And most of the things I talked about, or at least things I want to talk about, were not very like controversial. Like I never talk, like in general, I'm not someone who talks about like politics, and you know, I just kind of talk about the finer things in life. So I wasn't really offending anyone in that respect. And but like yeah, I mean, I felt actually kind of more free in Brazil in a lot of ways than I did in the U.S. just because of I fit in more in Brazil than I do in the U.S. as far as my appearance. It's actually kind of funny. I had a lot of foreigners who would come and take pictures with me, thinking I was Brazilian, and I like play the part. Like, do you speak English? Like, I'm half. My mom's from Nigeria and my dad's white, so I mean theoretically I could be like Brazilian.
Oh, okay.
You know? That happened like 300 years ago. But yeah. So and I have a curly afro, so you know it looks really Brazilian, and so yeah, for me I fit in really well. So you know it was just really relaxed, especially after coming from China where I don't fit in at all.
Of course.
Which you know I like that situation. I thrive in those kind of situations, but it was really refreshing for once to kind of blend in with the rest of the masses.
And did that affect your singing or your composure, your confidence?
It definitely affected my Portuguese. It definitely affected my Portuguese, and I'll tell you why. I'm sure it's different for Alex, but you know, in China, for example, I got really good at Chinese, and phonetically, Chinese is not that difficult. So, if you do it right, you can speak with a really authentic accent. So, I talk to people on the phone in Chinese, and like to get an apartment, and then they think I was Chinese and be very, you know, get the shock of their life when I show up. And in Brazil, though, it was really crazy because eventually I thought I was pretty good at Portuguese, feeling confident, and then I hit a point when I would meet people, and they wouldn't psychologically be able to accept that I wasn't Brazilian. And what happened when that happened was people started talking to me completely different.
How so?
And well, for example, you know, the way I'm speaking right now because it's a Skype call and I'm trying to articulate a very clear idea, I'm speaking a lot more articulate than I usually do with my friends back at home, you know, playing video games or whatever. And if you think about it, that way you speak with your most comfortable friends. You don't always speak that way to foreigners, no matter how good their English is, because if they have an accent that you can detect, it kind of automatically makes you kind of monitor what you're saying and make sure that he can understand it.
Yeah.
And so I realized that in Brazil, where the first time people would think I was Brazilian, you know, no one thought I was Mexican, no one thought I was Chinese, but I can pass as Brazilian. And so I meet people and they wouldn't know I was from the U.S. And then all of a sudden, like, I couldn't understand anything they were saying. After 3 months of understanding everything, I couldn't understand anything. And I didn't want to blow my cover, so I was just kind of like, nah, man, seen kind of, and like, and then it was crazy. And then after like 2 weeks of really trying to pay attention, my Portuguese jumped again because you know, there's this whole new level of Portuguese I didn't even know existed, and that really inspired me to kind of really formalize my techniques for mastering the accent as early on as possible, because I don't want to be excluded from any kind of sector of society anymore linguistically. So yeah, that was something that was a really big deal for me.
So what was it that you said that made you make that big jump in your language skills in Portuguese? Was it getting that sense of comfort by doing freestyle?
Yeah, that was the first jump, really. I mean, I guess there's two jumps. I got there, and then I joined like a samba band, like a really big samba band, drum band, and I got really into it, and I was learning all their songs. And then that's when I got really into learning songs. And then that's when I realized how powerful that was, because each song I learned, I can feel like Portuguese is getting easier in my mouth. Like, it wasn't so hard to say nasal sounds anymore.
Yeah.
It wasn't so hard to like speak fast. And then people were complimenting on it and boosting my confidence. Then I found the freestyle thing, one more challenge. I tried to rise to it. In that process, my Portuguese got even better, especially from rapping, because rapping is more complex than, singing a samba song.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped out a lot. And then finally, after I was already rapping and like I can carry on a conversation for a couple of minutes without betraying any kind of sense of foreignness, people would start speaking to me differently. And then in that sense, it's a whole new series of vocabulary words and things I didn't really know before. And that was my last jump. So when I go back, unfortunately that was right towards the end of my trip, so I didn't really get to develop it that much, but I plan on going back this year, so we'll see what happens.
So Alex, how about for you? So your stage name is Don Blanquito, so obviously you're characterized for being a gringo. How is it for you when you're in Brazilian, with your Brazilian friends? Do you think that they only speak to you the way they speak to everyone else, or do they distinguish you as a foreigner in the way they speak?
Well, at first I was considered like, the white boy in funk or whatever, like, like the gringo funk. Yeah. But after a while, I earned, I guess, the respect of the people and of other MCs as one of them, essentially, which is cool, because now I'm Don Blanquito, not the gringo of funk, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or the gringo of hip hop, Portuguese, which is a big deal. I think like that was a tough hump to overcome. I mean, just basically get the respect of the local people, because like I was saying with Idaho, it's tough. It's one thing to be able to write a song. Anyone could write a song. Anyone can take a course and pass an exam and say he's essentially fluent on a resume. But to be able to write a song that the people are going to accept, and to be able to spit lyrics that the people are going to accept and think are cool, that's the real obstacle, I think. And I think that is one thing that took a while for me to really be able to do, and that's fluent, being able to understand the culture and what's gonna be successful in the ears of the public. That's what's not easy to do, because you essentially have to do something that one of their own people would be able to do. It's not just about being able to put together 2 bars or 16 bars that rhyme. That's not the hardest part. It's making it rhyme and making someone think it's funny or cool, as if it was written by an actual local. And I think that took a while. And in the beginning, I got frustrated because I'd write something and someone would be like, "Man, that's cheesy" or whatever, and I didn't understand why. At the time, I thought it was cool. But eventually, when you really pick up the culture and the fluency of the culture, and you really understand what the culture is about, and then that's when you can start putting together lyrics that appease to the public. And I think that, I mean, obviously, I'm a white Jew from LA. It's not every day you see someone like that get on stage, kind of like an 8 Mile situation. You know what I mean? But in a different language, more dynamic.
What's an
8 Mile? Like Eminem. Like
okay.
8 Mile is his story about how he got basically came up. He basically broke through the barrier of black and white with hip hop. He's the kind of guy who kicked the door open and made space for white MCs, I think, to enter the game, and be more accepted. Because before him, you didn't have too many white MCs. It was more like a fluke, like Vanilla Ice type thing, but now it's like it's a normal thing. There's a million white rappers now, but I think there was no white rappers here in Brazil. I still don't think there are. I mean, that are American or foreign, and so getting people to accept you for as a real artist, and not as just a white guy who's trying to rap in Portuguese. That's the hardest part. And I think like that what gave me that leap from step A to step B was being able to write lyrics that they actually like the first I have 50 songs in Portuguese. The first 10 songs I thought were hot, and they were hot, but I realized they were just hot to like Americans. They were hot to like foreigners. This shit's tight. But Brazilians, it wasn't getting played in the clubs. People were like, this shit is crazy. I mean, but eventually, I started getting more the lingo and the linguagem of the favela, and then I started putting together better rhymes and things that were more, you know what I mean, that I originally had thought were totally, penetrating the local culture and like this is going to be a hit, and it was once again it was like one more track that like, you know, 50 people liked, and everyone else was like, what is this shit, you know? So it takes, I think it really takes time. I think you really need to penetrate the culture first. It's not just about speaking the language before. It's about really entrenching yourself into the culture. It's about being able to understand, you know, hand gestures and the comedy of the culture and the rhythm of the culture, and really getting to know the people inside and out before you can make music that they're going to accept. Because that's the hardest thing, getting music for them to accept. It's not about just being able to write. Anyone can, like I said, take a course or go abroad for, you know, a month or two and pick up the language and essentially write a rhyme. But it's not that easy. You know, it's getting people to accept your music and to play it and love it, and that's hard.
So what made you decide to live in the favela? You know, was it because you wanted to get into the culture? What's that? No, not at all. I was already into the culture. I mean, I'd had multiple crews in Copacabana, even through jiu-jitsu, through a bunch of different, you know, roads. But the thing is, the favela, I was spending way too much money on rent. I was getting killed on rent. So I had a bunch of friends that lived in the favela, and I was like, well, see if there's any houses for sale. And I got some money lent to me, and I bought a house. And it was a huge cost saver, you know, because you know I was living rent free. So all the money that I was blowing on rent, which was 1,500 reais a month plus you know, I could blow on myself and spend on CDs and T-shirts and whatever, you know. So I got and on studio time. It just took a huge load off my back, and definitely it helped me get into local culture, because it's the rawest of the raw. You know, if you go into the poorest part in the projects, the people are the realest in the sense of, you know, just raw day to day. Carioca's, I feel like in Rio, it's one of the toughest cultures in the world. Like, look, bottom line is, it is or it isn't. If they don't like your shit, they're gonna throw cans at you. They're gonna let you know very quickly that your music is whack, or whatever it is you're doing is pissing them off. This culture is not. It's very uninhibited. You know what I mean? It's very free, and it's also it's a very strong culture. Think about it. You know, it's a mix of the hottest bloods in the world. You have Africa, you have Spain, you have Germany, you have, you know, Portugal. It's just crazy, insane blend of just hot blood. So people are just very fiery, very passionate, very violent, very everything. You know what I mean? So if you try to jump into their swimming pool, you're either going to drown or you're going to swim. So it's a question of, I think I came here to kind of prove it to myself. Like, I'm going to make it somewhere. If I can make it here, I can make it anywhere, kind of thing. And I still haven't made it to where I want to be. I've made it in some ways, but I'm not where I want to be. But definitely, it's constant progress. There's no decline and there's no plateau. So I feel like, obviously, the more you're here, I think living in a favela, bottom line, to answer your question, is an incredible experience. It's definitely a rich place. Like, you know, I have a song called The Favela, and I talk about how rich of a place it is, where most people look at it from the outside in thinking it's a shithole or a slum, which it is on a physical note, but the people, I mean, it's a community, you know what I mean? And I feel like you learn so much socially. I mean, it's like, if you can live here, you can live anywhere, pretty much. Maybe not Africa. Africa's the one place I think is more screwed up than Brazil, and maybe Haiti or Honduras. But, I mean, I'm saying in regards to, Brazil's a crazy place. I think it's just, you know, it's tough to make it here, you know? It's a very strong culture in the sense of I mean, I've seen people get hit in the face with cans after singing. I mean, like, I saw some chick get hit in the face with a half-full beer can because she sucked, and it was like right after I sang, and I felt good because I was like, I didn't get any cans, you know. but I'm just saying, it's like it's ruthless. It's ruthless. You know what I mean? Like, people here, I've had people give me the finger when I sing, and you know, you're sitting there and you're rocking a show for 5,000 people, and you got one asshole with his finger in the air, and you're just like, you can't concentrate on. You kind of like, you're thinking about kicking him in the face, but you're like, wow, are you giving the finger back? But then all of a sudden you might give the finger to the wrong person that liked your music, so you gotta kind of be, it's crazy, you know. I think Rio is just I hope I don't have a problem with me swearing. It's a very motherfucker culture. Rio is no joke. It's a very strong opinionated culture, and I feel like you either get hugged by them and taken in by them, or you get rejected. There's no in between, I think, here. So, just for people who aren't familiar with what a favela is, can you explain what a favela is?
Sure. It's essentially a slum, a shantytown. It's the projects. You know, it's It's a hill. A favela is flat, but a morro is considered it's like a favela on a hill. It's basically just, a community where people have, just kind of keep building. Usually people build up and just small houses, usually brick houses. There's all kinds of people that live here. Mostly, the more the elbow grease type people, blue collar, not white collar. I mean, not even blue collar. It's mostly like, construction workers, bartenders, waiters. More of the low end jobs are what fill up most of the favelas. But you also have lawyers here. You also have, you have all kinds of people that work here, live here. I mean, but I mean, my favela is different than most, though, because it's next to Copacabana, so it's not. It's bad. It was bad. It was rough. Yeah, it's still pretty hood, but you're also 10 minutes from the beach, which there's over 700 favelas in Rio, and I'd say 702 of them are not by the beach. You know what I mean? So it's a lot more harsh. It's a lot more, urban. But this is pretty urban. It's tropical though, because you have trees and you have projects, and then you also can see the beach, and you're less than a mile from millionaires. So it's a pretty crazy, extreme. But I think to put favela in a nutshell, it's just a community. It's a poor community, with less of an infrastructure than a mainstream city would have.
Got it.
It's like a shanty town.
Right. Okay. So I'm curious for both of you. You both do rap. Idahosa, you said that you did samba at one point. Is there a reason that you guys do rap instead of traditional Brazilian music now?
I mean, I grew up on rap. That's what I listened to a lot as a kid.
Mm.
The thing is, I listened to a lot of stuff. I mean, I played classical violin since I was 5, and at the same time, I was freestyle rapping with my friends. So I don't actually do any single genre. Nor do I actually do a genre. I'm not a professional musician like Alex is. I'm an amateur.
Mm.
And
no, but you seem pretty. You seem pretty. Fucking. You seem like a prodigy.
No, I mean, I have a lot of musical experience. Like I said, I was hardcore into classical music since I was 6, and the kind of like physical training aspect. And then at the same time, I was always rapping with my friends and having fun. And then since college, expanded out to a bunch of different genres. And then combine that, I take an academic approach to music and like music theory and music cognition and whatnot. And as far as to my techniques for teaching language, I identify rap as being a superior language learning tool to singing for the simple fact that rap is faster and more complex and thus more similar to normal speech. So unless you lived in a musical, you're not going to be singing when you order McDonald's. You're going to be speaking. And rap is just more similar. It's just more similar to speech. So and I learned that in Brazil. Well, I was doing samba songs, have a really rich culture, and then I got into the rap scene, and I realized that learning these rap songs and getting better at freestyling is helping my Portuguese a lot more than singing. They're great songs, but they're just slower. And for the sheer purpose of getting my language better, then rapping was a better option. Yeah.
It's a lot easier to put together than rap. Rap is very, like you said, it's much more complex. It's much more intense and much more fast. So your brain has to work faster. I think a slow song, you have time to think about what you're going to say. For example, in a freestyle battle, I'm sure Idahosa could have put together a soft song. It would have been much easier for him to do in Portuguese than it would have been for a hardcore.
That's actually one of my techniques.
100 BPM.
When you get tired from freestyling, you can't think of anything. You just start singing it. And then that way you have more time to think, and people are like, "Oh yeah, wow, he's switching it up."
Yeah.
But really, it's a trick. and then you go back after you take a break to the rap.
That's funny.
Exactly.
So I was thinking before we finish, maybe if you guys would be open to doing one of your raps or one of your songs in either language, but just keep the lyrics clean, if possible.
It's going to be in Portuguese.
Okay, good.
You want me to do it with a beat or no beat?
As you wish.
I'll do it with a beat. It's better that way,
Sure.
Hold on, let me see. Let me know if you guys can hear. You want to do the whole song, or how many? It's 3 minutes.
Why don't you just do like a minute?
Okay, cool. I'll do it until the hook. Can you guys hear this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
right. Rio de Janeiro, a melhor cidade. Vem humilde com malandragem. Cachaça, biquínis e sacanagem. Pede a linha, fica à vontade. Carnaval, blocos, verão. Samba, mangueira é o caldeirão. Copa posto no Leblon. DJ solta o tamborzão. Rio de Janeiro não tem igual. Verão, 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 carnaval. Rio, I love the way you make me feel. Rio, I love the way you're so real. Rio, I love the way you're so fly. Rio, I swear you get me so high. Rio, 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 oh my. I love you so much, I can't lie. Cachaça, fumaça, mulata, cachaça, fumaça, mulata, cachaça. Yeah, so that's like a verse from a track.
Yeah, I saw that one on your. That's the first one on your website, right?
Yeah, one of them, a video, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that one. Oh, great, thank you. How about Idahosa? Would you?
Sure. I want to take a chance to represent my my drum band, Bangala Fumanga.
Okay.
And this is one of my cavaquinho teachers. This is actually his original song, and it's a ciranda, which is a type of northeastern Brazilian genre. And so I got my cavaquinho here. I'm not sure how good it's gonna sound, quality-wise. You might want to edit it later.
Okay.
But it's like this. Mãos dadas dançando ciranda, uma pensão de lia, tamaracá. Me embala o som dessa dança, a mãe que sussurra, canção de Iná. Eu quero ciranda, cirandeiro. Eu quero girar, cirandeiro. Quero brincar feito criança, na roda de dança que vem do fundo do mar. Eu quero ciranda, cirandeiro. Eu quero girar, cirandeiro. Quero brincar feito criança, na roda de dança que vem do fundo do mar.
That was great. Alex, cool. I think he was being very humble with saying that he's just a novice. What did you said something like that you're not a professional musician, but you sound excellent.
No, he's a prodigy. He speaks 10 languages and plays 10 instruments. Yeah. I don't know. He's definitely mine.
This is great. So do you guys have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share about either learning languages or learning music or expressing yourself through music in a new language?
I mean,
you can start. Yeah.
I think it's essential. I think music. Music is definitely a great tool if you've got the patience. The thing is, it's fast. You might hear it. I don't recommend, putting it on a radio, and putting it on the radio and trying to, maybe it's a good test. I think it's more of a quiz. I think the way you should do it really is, like he did it. Study songs. Buy a CD and play them over and over again, and try and actually dissect the song and put together the sentences and understand the song. Then you can test your your skills in the field by actually listening to the radio. But I mean, definitely, it's an incredible tool. I mean, it's a tool that I didn't take as much of advantage as I should have. But I mean, it's definitely. I mean, that and TV are incredible. Music is and it's a cool thing too because it actually gets people involved. I think writing a song would also be a great tool as well. People to try to do too. After listening to it, it's cool to try and put music together. I mean, who knows? It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. How about you?
Sure, I'll just say, I want to challenge people to think, what are the two things that are universal to every single civilization of mankind since the dawn of time, everywhere, and that's music and language. And there's a reason why that is. There's a reason why our brains are set up that way. It's all sound, and we communicate through sound. So I don't think people should think about them separately because they really are the same thing. And one final note on that, you can expect to see a lot more people saying that in the next coming years, because they're actually proving now through biological neurological research, brain scanning, that your brain actually does process language the same way it does music. Not exact same way, but very similar ways. So if you want to look for answers to your language problem, whatever it is, I encourage you to look in the music world the same way I did.
I think that's excellent what you said, and what also we haven't talked about is the fact that music engages more parts of your brain than language does. So if you remember something to a tune, or if you rap it, then you're more likely to recall it. Yeah. And something that's also really cool is that if you imagine a song in your head, you're activating the same parts of your brain that would be activated if you were listening to it.
Yeah, I train my instruments a lot in my head.
You do?
Yeah, it works.
Huh. Alex,
if you think about your fingers when you play guitar, it actually works.
So are you like, you're on the bus and you pretend in your head that you're playing your...
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I was ever bored, man. Because whenever I'm not doing anything, there's a whole symphony going on in my head. So, yeah, so it actually does work if you actually visualize, because, you know, it's all brain. Everything we do is with our brain. So you can engage that. It's kind of matrixy, but it's how it is in real life, you know.
For sure. Alex, you were going to say something.
No, I feel like, you know, like you said, music is just, it's definitely a great tool. I mean, I 100% agree with you. I think that, I don't know what I was going to say, actually. I was just listening to Idahosa, but music is, I mean, I think yeah, it's a great way to remember something. It's a much more fun way to remember something than being in a class and getting, you know, flashcards and getting, you know, 100 words. I think if there's one word that sticks in your head, I mean, like I said, I think I would use music as a tool to pick up vocab and also to try and structure sentences, but I wouldn't do it by listening to the radio unless it's live. I think for you to really, I would suggest listening to the same songs over and over again until you master those, to apply what you. Well, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to the radio, but it's going to be much more hardcore and fast. It might be a little advanced for someone who's trying to take, you know, a 1, 2, 3 step approach, you know. But like I said, man, I totally agree with what you guys are saying. I mean, I think it's 100% a much more fun way to learn.
Excellent. Well, great. Thank you both of you for making the time for